Wagner, Director of CCAM Technical Assistance Center. I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar. Today is the first of a series of PolicyMap training webinars that we will be having. We are recording this and it will be posted to our website for future reference. CCAM-TAC provides support and technical assistance in many forms, everything from on-site support, training, and other resources. One of the resources that we do provide is access to our community transportation provider map that we have linked to PolicyMap. This is a great tool for planning purposes, for providing data, for submitting proposals or grant proposals. It allows you to custom design your service area, link it to one or more of the numerous databases that are in PolicyMap. If your program currently is not listed in our provider map, at the end of this webinar, we'll provide a QR code. It takes you literally 3 to 5 minutes to enter the information needed, and you will be then listed in our database, and you will be able to pull up your information in your service area and highlight it when you're using these mapping tools from PolicyMap. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Aaron Klein. Aaron is from PolicyMap. He is our expert of the day. Aaron's going to kind of start out with some of the basics of PolicyMap. We're going to go for a little bit short of an hour, allowing you some time for questions. Please, during the presentation, put your questions in the chat, and we will call you out at the end to ask Aaron the questions. Um, Go ahead, Aaron.
All right, thanks, Bill. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen here. And also thank you to everyone for joining this session. So my name is Aaron Klein. I am PolicyMap's account manager, and I'm really your go-to person for any questions that you have about the tool. Um, so if there's anything that I go over during the session that um, maybe you need some more information on, you can always just reach out to me directly. Here's my email address, so I'll put that in the chat here. And then in terms of accessing PolicyMap, so that can be done through, there's a unique NCMM PolicyMap URL, which you'll see up here, and I'm going to put that in the chat as well. Um, if you already have an account set up, you can log in through this login page here. If you don't, you'll see here that Bill is the site administrator. So you can reach out to him, and there's a link here to his email address, and he can set you up with an account. So I'm
Everyone
gonna,
today should have access. I went through this morning and made sure.
okay, thanks, Bill. So in case anyone isn't already familiar with PolicyMap, we have data from over 150 different data sources, and there's about 75,000 different individual data indicators. And one of the really great things about PolicyMap is that all of that data is already within the tool here, and it's really easy to access and then visualize on the map. So as Bill mentioned, I'm going to start off by just going over some of the basics of the tool. And then toward the end of the session, I'll cover some of the more advanced features like how to download data from the tool. Um, I'll go over the multi-layer feature and then a couple of other things as well. But if you do have any questions, just feel free to put those in the chat. I'll try to keep an eye on that. And then I'll also leave time at the end of the session for just like a little Q&A session. All right, so when you first log into the NCMM PolicyMap site, this is what you're going to see. So it's going to be a map of the entire US. And you'll see that it automatically puts that transit agency service area boundaries. It'll put that on the map. You are able to remove that by clicking this X icon in the legend here. But those agency service areas can be accessed in this CCAM tab over in the top left here. So the map that you see is fully interactive, so you're able to both pan around here and zoom in or out. Over at the top of the screen, you're going to see this location search bar, and this allows you to navigate down to something like an address. So I'll just type in PolicyMap's address here, and you'll see that it's going to zoom in and it's going to drop a pin on that location. But the really cool thing about the search bar up here is that you can also search for different types of geographies. So for example, I can type in something like a zip code up here, and it's going to put that zip code boundary on the map. I can also search for different things like cities, counties, or any of these other geographies here. So let's zoom on over to Washington State here. And then you'll see that it's going to put that state boundary on the map. And then over toward the top left corner here, you're going to see this boundaries menu. And this contains all the different boundaries that are in PolicyMap. A lot of these you're probably already familiar with. So we have things like state boundaries in here, county boundaries, zip codes, all the way down to block groups. And if we add one of these to the map, so let's take a look at zip codes here. Now you can see that we're able to visualize all of those different zip codes at the same time. But one of the really unique features of PolicyMap is that you can actually go in here and create your own custom boundary or custom region. So if there's like a very specific target area that you're working in that maybe doesn't conform to any of those predefined boundaries, what you can do is click on this custom regions icon at the top of the screen here. That's going to open up this menu below, and you'll see a list of any custom region that you've previously saved in your account. Or in this case, it looks like this person shared these custom regions with the entire enterprise site. And then if you want to create a new custom region, you can just click where it says create region at the top here. And then you can select between one of three different custom region types. So I'll just run through each one of these. The first one here is the drawn custom region. And this one allows you to draw a custom region on the map. And you can do that by either dropping points like I am here. So something like this, for example. Or we have a second method here that allows you to sort of click and drag to draw a shape. The second type of custom region is the assembled region. The way that this one works is you get this drop-down menu here of all of the different boundaries that are in PolicyMap. So let's say maybe I'm working in an area that consists of several different zip codes. What I can do is just throw that zip code boundary on the map here. You'll see that all the different zip codes appear on the map. And then all I need to do is simply click to select the geographies that I want to include.
Aaron, can you give a quick demonstration? I know one of the boundaries is congressional districts.
Mhm.
Could you give an example and show how they could highlight a congressional district that they serve and provide information to their legislators?
Sure. Yeah, so congressional districts, if we just scroll down a little bit further here, they're going to be toward the bottom of this menu. So we'll do the 118th congressional district boundaries. So let's say I want to pull some data on maybe these three districts here. Again, I can just click to select each of those. I'll go ahead and click continue, and this allows me to give the custom region a unique name. So let's just call it Seattle here. You can also give it a description. And down toward the bottom here, you can also customize it a little bit. And then once you save that custom region, it's going to show up at the top of your custom regions menu here. Now, once you have the custom region on the map, you'll see this little window here that appears at the top of the custom region. And this gives you some different ways to sort of visualize data for this particular area. So I'm going to try to cover each of these features at some point during the session. But for now, I just want to focus on this last thing in the menu here, which is our reports feature. And the reports are really nice because they allow you to quickly pull a lot of different data sets at once for a certain area. And you'll see that in the reports menu here, there's actually four different types of reports that you can choose from. And each of these contains different data sets. So I'm going to highlight the first one here, which is our community profile report. And this one's more of like a demographic report that gives you a snapshot of life in a given area. So it might take a second to load here. Usually it's pretty quick, but the area we selected is a little bit large. So let's just give it a second here. My internet might also be slow. I might actually just try this for maybe a single congressional district. That might make it a little bit quicker. My apologies here. So let's put those congressional district boundaries back on the map here. All right, so let's try Washington's 7th district. So again, I can just search for an individual congressional district in the search bar up here. And then let's see if I can generate this report for this individual district. Here we go. So in this community profile report, you'll find a lot of different census data sets. So things like population trends for the area. So here we can see the estimated population for this congressional district in 2020. We can see how that's changed over time, and then also how that compares to the different geographies that it sits within. So King County here, and then the state of Washington. And then a little bit further down here, we have some data on racial characteristics. So just at a quick glance, we can see that this district is a little bit over 64% white population and just over 5% African American. We can also view things like income levels for the area. So it looks like the highest percentage of households in the district fall within this highest range here of a median household income of 150,000 or more. And like I mentioned, most of the data in this report is from the census, which you can see at the bottom of each data set here. So it's going to tell you the source of the data and then also the years that the data is from. And pretty soon, all of this census ACS data is going to be updated to the most recent 2020 through 2024 release. Our data team's currently in the process of updating all that data. So hopefully, I believe by the end of the month, all of this data should be updated in here. And then over toward the top right corner of the report, you'll see the save icon, which will save your report. And then you can also use this print icon here to export it into a PDF format. Someone asked, do you have to select a region/district in boundaries in order to generate the report? So there are a couple of different ways to do it. You can either pull up an area using the search bar up here. So like I did before, you can select, in this case, congressional district, and then search for the individual district that you're looking for. You don't need to add the boundaries in here. I was just doing that just for a visualization. Um, and then the other way to get to the reports is over in the top right here. There is a direct link to the reports. So that'll just take you back into the reports menu here. And then again, you can search for a location using the search bar at the bottom here. And the reports can be generated for everything from a custom region that you've created to a congressional district, or even all the way down to something like a census tract. And then one final thing I want to highlight with the custom regions here is that in the menu, we do have a really nice share feature in here. So if you click on the copy custom region icon, this allows you to share a custom region. And you can either share it with all enterprise license users. So what that's going to do is it's going to make it available to uh, every person that is accessing through the NCMM site. So for these other custom regions that you see here, it looks like this person, they use that all enterprise license share option. Most likely you're going to want to use the second option here, which is individual user. And this allows you to share with individual users via email address. So once you type in another user's email and you click send, then your custom region is going to show up in their menu here. All right, so next I'm going to go over the data. And all of the data that's in PolicyMap can be found at the top of the screen here under each of these categories. And like I mentioned before, there are about 75,000 different indicators in the tool. So it can be a little bit overwhelming at first. But usually to make things a little bit simpler, I like to break it down into two different data types. So the first type of data that you'll find in PolicyMap is what's called point data. And point data is essentially address level data. So if we go into, let's do the quality of life tab here. Typically, the point data will be the first submenu in each category. So you'll see here that we have quality of life locations. And this little icon to the left of the data set, that just indicates that it's a point data set. So just as an example, I'll just put this nonprofit location data set on the map here. This one's probably the largest. So this is just sort of showing us how many nonprofits are in the area here. So that's really a quick overview of the point data. We do have some others that I don't know if you would be interested in, but we have a couple of different education point data sets, as well as under the health tab, we have things like health facility locations. But really the point data just makes up like a very small portion of the data in PolicyMap. The vast majority of the data is the other type, which is called layer data. And layer data is data that's been aggregated to different geographies. So I'll start off under the first demographics tab here. And I'll try to highlight a couple of different data sets that I think are really interesting to look at. I guess before I do that, I should just quickly highlight again this CCAM tab here. So in here you'll find two different data sets that our data team uploaded specifically for this NCMM site. So the one that I highlighted earlier is this transit agency service area data set. And this is a really good way to see what different transit agencies operate in each individual service area. So if you click on the boundary of one of these, it's going to show you the different transit agencies that operate within the service area here. So it looks like there are three different agencies that operate within this service area here. And then if we click on this little plus icon to the right of any of these, we're able to view some data about this specific agency. So it's going to give you, some basic info about the agency. And then further down here, we also include some contact information for that agency. And you'll see that you can also generate reports for any of these service areas. So you are able to really quickly pull data for any of these individual service areas.
You can also drop those names of the providers using the label tab in the right there. Yeah.
Yeah, so by default, I think this will be turned off, but if you turn the labels on here, um, those agency labels should appear on the map here for you. And then the other data set you're going to find in the CCAM tab is this transit agency counts layer. And this one's simply showing you the number of transit agencies for each of these counties. So the darker colored areas or the darker colored counties have a higher number of transit agencies. So we can see here that King County has 8, whereas some of these surrounding counties here have just 1 or 2.
And I would clarify, these are agencies that are providing services funded through FTA, meaning public transit services, specialty services such as um, programs designed for seniors or individuals with disabilities, tribal providers, mobility managers, and volunteer driver programs that are receiving our FTA funding.
Got it. Thank you,
And
Bill.
and
Appreciate that.
you can filter that out on the community provider map if you want to just look up um, tribal um, organizations or mobility managers or whatever. You can layer that on there.
And then it looks like there was a question on, someone asked, can you pull up limited English speaking in a certain county? So that is something that you can view under this demographics tab here. So we have a lot of different census related data sets. So things like population, age, and then further down here, you'll see language as well. So if we go into language spoken at home, or just below that, we have limited English. So if we do Spanish here, this layer is showing us the estimated percent of people who are 5 or older who speak Spanish at home and English less than very well for each of these areas here. So again, the darker colored areas have a higher percentage, and then the lighter colored areas here have a lower percentage. You're also asking if you can view it by county. So down at the very bottom of the legend here, you're actually able to switch between different geographies, which is really nice. A lot of the census data sets like this one are going to give you many different options here. So for this one, we can actually switch to the county level. And then it's going to give us the value or the percentage for each of these counties here. Another really interesting layer that we have under the demographics tab is this predominant race ethnicity layer. This one's usually really interesting to look at in more urban areas like this one. And what's really cool about this layer is that it's combining all of the different races into a single map here. So if you look in this legend on the left side, you'll see that each color represents a different race. And then the shading of each color represents a different percent range. So all of these sort of purplish areas that you see here are predominant white population. And you can actually click on any of these areas and it's going to show you what the values are for each individual race here. Then we also have these other areas here that are predominant Asian population. And then it looks like there are some areas here that are predominant Black, as well as predominant Hispanic population. And then moving over to the incomes and spending tab here, we do have a couple of different types of income that you can look at. So we have per capita income in here, median family income, and median household income. And what you'll see for a lot of these data sets, like if we look at poverty, for example, you'll see that it really breaks it out and it gets very granular. So you can actually view poverty by different things like race, by age, or even by, something like veteran status. So that's really why there is so much data in the tool. Um, and I always recommend if you have the time, just try to explore each of these categories here just to get a feel for the layout of the menus. I'll jump over to the quality of life tab here, and I would say that this is probably the most unique of all the categories because it contains a wide variety of different data sets that we think affect someone's quality of life. So in here you'll find everything from criminal justice data sets to you'll see transportation we have in here. So this includes things like we have some different public transit data sets. You can look at the average distance to the nearest public transit stop for an area.
I can share with you, I've been getting a lot of responses on mapping transportation affordability um, for certain areas.
Gotcha. Yeah, so that's another really interesting data set we have in here. So we have location affordability, and this is broken out by different household types, also by, household tenure. So we have it for both owners and renters. So there's really just a ton, even just in this one affordability tab. But I'll show you what one of these looks like. So let's maybe look at, let's do moderate income family. So with this layer here, so this is showing you the percent of income spent on transportation by a moderate income family household. So it looks like in and around Seattle, it's pretty low compared to some other areas of the country. Whereas if we go to, some of these areas over by the West Coast here, looks like some of these households spend, over 35% of their income on just transportation, which is really high. And one other thing I want to point out is that in the legend here, it's always going to tell you the source of the data. So here you can see that it's coming from HUD. And you can actually click on that source, and that's going to take you into what's called the data sources page here. This just provides like very detailed information about the source. There's usually a link to, we have the raw data here. And then you can also see when was the last time that we updated the data in PolicyMap. And then one other really useful tip is that if you're ever unsure about a certain data set, you can always click on this little eye icon toward the top of the legend, and that's going to pull up a description of the data set. So usually this does a pretty good job of sort of explaining how the data was calculated. And then a couple of other transportation data sets we have in here. Um, this walkability index is usually really interesting to look at. So this is from the EPA. And they created this index here, which ranks a block group based on how walkable it is. So of course, in a more urban area like Seattle, Most of these areas are going to be this darker color, which means that it has a higher walkability score. Then, of course, if we go out to the suburbs here, we have some areas that have a very low walkability score. Someone asked if we have the number of people employed. So we do have some employment and unemployment data, which can be found under the economy tab here. So you'll see that we have the employment and unemployment tab here. And we do have two different sources for this data. So we have both the BLS data here. What's nice about this is that it's updated more regularly than the census, and you can actually view it by month. So this is showing you the number of employed people in King County. And then we do also have employment data from the census here. The nice thing about the census data versus the BLS data is that it does get more granular. So you can view it at smaller geographies here.
Aaron, can you show how you can do it? Yeah, the percentage or the number. You can switch back and forth for the same data set.
Yeah, so one of the really powerful ways to customize layered data sets like this one is that you can change both the year of the data. Um, this data set, unfortunately, only has this one 5-year ACS estimate available. Other data sets are going to have more options in here. And then just next to that, you can also switch the variable here. So this allows us to change between, we can look at the estimated number for each area. And some data sets are also going to give you this percent change variable, which is really nice because this will allow us to understand which of these areas have either increased over time in employment or decreased. It's just taking a second to load here. Sorry, my computer's being a little bit slow today. While that's loading, someone asked, can you export the data in a shape file? So you can't export data, unfortunately, into a shape file, but you can export it into an Excel file. Um, and I'll go over that feature in just a couple minutes here. So with this percent change variable, we can now see areas here that have increased over time in the percentage of people that are employed or decreased. And then one final thing I want to mention with the layer data sets like this one is that if you click on where it says ranges here, you're actually able to manually customize each of these individual ranges. So by default, it's going to be set to these numbers here that I know they seem really random, but these are actually based on the data at the national level. One thing that I think is really useful if you're just looking at the data for a very specific area is if you adjust these, I think it just makes the map a lot more easier to interpret. So what you can actually do is simplify these numbers. We could do something like, say, 25%, 20%, 10 and 5. Or we could even raise this highest range all the way up to like, say, 40%. So now we can really focus on areas that have either a very high percentage of em employed people or even a very low percentage. And if you click on any of the ranges in the legend, that's going to isolate that range on the map here. So now we're just looking at census tracts in purple here, where at least 40% of the population, and this is actually just age 65 or older, are employed. Now, once you're done creating a map, there are a couple of different ways how you can share this map with someone else. Over on the right side of the screen here, you'll see the print icon. And that's going to open up this, what we call the print modal here, which allows you to export a static image of the map. And what's nice about the print modal here is that you're able to sort of customize it a bit. So you can edit the title up here, the data description. You can drag around the legends. And then once you click this export button at the bottom here, it's going to download a copy of this image within your browser. Now, if you're looking to share like a more interactive map with someone else, that's really what this share icon is for down in the bottom right here. The two main ways to do that are via link. So this will generate a link to your map, which you can then send to someone else. Or you can use the email share feature here. And this is just going to email that same exact link directly to another person. And once that person opens the link up, the map will appear for them exactly as it looked when you click the share icon here. But they'll then be able to hover over the map to view the data. And if they're accessing through the NCMM PolicyMap site, they'll be able to use like all of the other features that I highlighted before. Let's see here. Someone asked, can you share it with someone who doesn't have an account? Yes. So you are able to share a map with someone that does not have an account. I would say if they don't have an account, use this share publicly option instead of the share within enterprise license option. And for someone that does not have an account, they will still be able to view the map and hover over it, but it is going to be a little bit more limited for them. So they won't be able to necessarily like change things in the legend here. So just keep that in mind. All right, so there was a question on how to export the data. So next I'm going to go over the download feature. So the easiest way to download data from PolicyMap is using this download modal, which you can access in the top right here. And we really created this feature to make it as easy as possible to take the data outside of PolicyMap. So you'll see that this feature has just 3 steps here. Step 1 is to select the data that you want to download. And you can do that by clicking on the add icon here, and then you can search for a data set. So if we type in something like, let's do transportation, it's going to pull up all the different data sets that relate to that keyword. And then we can just simply select one of these. Let's do maybe Let's do the percent of workers who commuted via bicycle. So that's going to add that data set under step one here. And you can then change the year of the download as well as the variable. And then over in step two here, this is where you select the location that you're downloading for. So let's say we want to download this data for, let's do Washington State. I can just search for that. And then I can choose the geography that I'm downloading the data by. So if we select city here, this download's going to give me a list of every single city in the state of Washington. And it's going to tell me the percent of workers who commute via bicycle for each of those cities. And then going back to step one, you are also able to download any point data set. So things like, say, public schools, for example. So this would just give you a list of every single public school in the state of Washington. And someone asked, how do you get into the data downloader? So you can do that over in the top right here. You'll see this little download icon. And then this third and final type of download here, which is the points with layer data download. This one's a little bit more unique because it's going to stamp each of the points here with the layer data. So it's essentially going to combine both of these data sets together into a single file. And then in step two, you're also going to see that you can download for any custom regions that you've saved. And that's really all there is to it. So you can give your file a unique name here. You can change the data format as well as the delivery method. If you select the email option, it's just going to email that file over to you. Or you can select this download via browser option, and your file is going to pop up in this little folder here over at the top of the screen. So here is the file that we downloaded. So this is the layer download. And we have a list of every single city in Washington, which you can see in column B here. In columns D and E, it's going to give you the GeoID for each of those cities. And then if we look in column F here, it's telling us the percent of people who commuted via bicycle for each of those cities. Someone asked, when would you select machine readable data format? Really, that is used if you're looking to then take the data from PolicyMap and import it into like a different data analysis tool. So something like Tableau, for example. What it's going to do is it's just going to remove the metadata from the columns. Um, so I know for some data programs that makes the import process easier. But really most of the time you're just going to want to use this human readable option. So that is how to download data in PolicyMap. So I know we don't have a ton of time here, so really quickly, I do just want to get through one other feature here, which is the multi-layer view up here. So by default, it's always going to be set to the single layer view, which only means that you can view one data layer at a time on the map. But we do also have the multi-layer view up here, which allows you to overlay up to 5 different data layers at the same time. So let's say we wanted to see how something like this transportation affordability data set intersects with something else. Um, what we can do is switch to this multi-layer map in the top right. And right away, you'll see that the map looks a lot different. So everything is just going to be one color at first. But once you adjust the ranges in the legend, you'll see that the map will start to reshade. So if we start to drag this left number here up, you'll see that more of these areas will start to fall off the map here. So let's do 20%. So now it's only showing us these areas here in purple where, so this is showing me the percent of income spent on transportation by a moderate income family. So these are just the areas where a moderate income family spends at least 20% of their income on transportation. And then from there, you can add a second layer. So we can go into the incomes tab here and we can add something like median household income. And we can say, maybe we just want to see areas where the median household income is no greater than something like 50,000. So it looks like none of these areas meet those criteria. So let's maybe do like 75,000. Now we can see that there are a couple of census tracts here in this Bremerton area that meet both of the different criteria that we set. So that's really the gist of the multi-layer view. It just sort of allows you to zoom down to a certain area, identify very specific criteria using the legends here, and then you can see which geographies meet the criteria that you set. And it's a really fun feature to play around with because there's really an unlimited number of different combinations you can add in here. So I always say start simple, start with maybe some very basic demographic data sets. And then once you get a feel for it, maybe start to add some more complex ones. And then one final thing I do want to mention before we wrap up here is that we did just add the ability to download for multi-layer maps, which is really exciting. So in the past, you would have to download one data layer at a time. But with the new multi-layer downloads, you can now download up to 5 different data layers for an area all at once. So if we go back into the download feature up here, now you'll see that under step 1, it's going to show both of those data layers that we added and the criteria that we set for each one of those. All right, so I think I'll stop there to see if there are any final questions that I can answer. And I know we sort of zoomed through that, so hopefully you guys aren't too overwhelmed. But the good thing is we do have a help docs page up here over at the top of the screen. And this is where you're going to find tutorials on all the features. We have really great short videos in the video gallery here. So if you ever get stuck for any reason, there are a ton of different training resources that you'll find here. And of course, you can always just reach out to us directly, and you'll see this contact button in the top right where you can do that. All right. Any other questions? I'm not seeing any in the chat.
Well, Aaron,